This happened a few months ago. I was working my usual night shift in the ER. I thought I was used to the hustle and bustle of hospital life. The bright lights hurt my eyes, and the smell of antiseptic lingered everywhere. I just wanted to help patients and support my family after my father got sick. But I'll never forget the strange things I experienced. On my third night, I was doing rounds when I heard noises from the supply closet. It sounded like muffled cries. I thought I must be imagining things. I was exhausted, and my mind was playing tricks on me. I pushed it aside. As the nights went on, things got weirder. One time, I was checking on a patient when I saw them talking to something in the corner of the room. There was no one there. My heart raced. I told myself it must be a side effect of the medication, but I wasn't sure if I believed that. It made me feel uneasy. Then, I noticed equipment moved around. One night, I walked into a room to grab a blood pressure cuff, but it was gone. I searched the entire place. I swear I left it right there. Each time something happened, I felt trapped, like the walls were closing in. I started doubting my own sanity. One night, I received a call on the intercom from room 204. I rushed to check, but the room was empty. Nobody was inside, yet the call had come through loud and clear. A chill ran down my spine. I had a creeping sense that something was very wrong. The scariest moment came when I was at the nurse's station. A nurse walked by and greeted me. I turned to respond, but she disappeared. One moment she was there, and the next, she was gone. My stomach dropped. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. On my last night, I decided it was time to leave the hospital for a while. I started to pack my things when I heard a whisper from behind me. I turned around, but nobody was there. My lungs felt heavy. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I can't explain those experiences. Were they real? I still wonder if I was losing my mind. Every time I close my eyes, I picture the shadows in the corners and the whispers echoing down the hall. I can't escape it. What really happened in that hospital? Was it just me, or was something lurking there? I still search for answers to things I can't quite grasp. I thought leaving the hospital would give me peace, but the memories haunted me. Nightmares plagued my sleep. I often woke up drenched in sweat, staring into the darkness, convinced that something was watching me. I tried to go about my daily life, but every corner felt like it held a secret. A couple of weeks later, I met up with Sarah, a nurse I'd worked with during my shifts. She was the one person I felt comfortable talking to. Over coffee, I hesitated, unsure if I should share what had happened. But I needed someone to understand. "So, how is the hospital treating you?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I took a deep breath. It's hard to describe. Strange things happened. I thought I was going crazy. Sarah leaned in, her face serious. "What kind of things?" I told her everything, the whispers, the empty calls, the disappearing nurse. She listened intently. When I finished, her expression changed. "You're not the only one," she said. "A few staff members have mentioned similar experiences. They say the hospital has a history." "What history?" My heart raced. I needed to know more. "They say it used to be an old asylum before it became a medical facility. Some believe the spirits of former patients still linger." She paused, gauging my reaction. "I know it sounds crazy, but strange things happen there. Equipment malfunctions, odd sounds in the night." I felt a mix of fear and intrigue. "What do you mean by strange sounds?" "In the storage rooms, sometimes you can hear someone calling out for help. They say it's fleeting, like a memory echoing. A few nights, I felt someone right behind me, only to turn around and find nothing." I thought back to the supply closet. It wasn't just me. There were more people feeling the same dread. After our conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to go back. I wondered if part of me was searching for answers, maybe seeking closure. Over the next few days, I decided to return to the hospital, just to talk to the night crew. I wanted to hear more about the stories. On my return, the place felt different. The lights buzzed louder, and the air was heavier. I walked carefully through the familiar halls. My heart thudded in my chest as I approached the nurse's station. The same spot where I had last felt that chilling dread. Just then, the intercom crackled again, far louder this time. "Help me," it was a voice I didn't recognize. The hairs on my arms stood up. That's when I realized I had to know more. I had to understand what was hidden within those walls. I took a deep breath and headed towards the supply closet. Every step echoed as if I was entering a forbidden realm. And then, the lights went out. I stood alone in the darkness, my heart racing. Suddenly, the hum of the fluorescent lights stopped, leaving an unsettling silence. The air felt thick, and I strained to hear anything: footsteps, rustling, or even breathing. But there was nothing. I reached out instinctively for the doorframe, my fingers brushing against the cool metal. I needed to find the light switch, but it felt like the walls were closing in on me. I took a shaky step back, trying to calm myself, reminding myself that I had come here to uncover the truth. As my eyes adjusted to the dimness, I decided to move forward. I remembered Sarah's words about the old asylum. There had to be something more beneath this hospital's surface, something not entirely finished. I reached the supply closet and ran my hands along the stacked boxes. The air was laced with dust and something else, something almost electric. I felt that prickle on the back of my neck again, that unsettling sensation that I wasn't alone. Then I heard it. A soft whisper that seemed to drift from the end of the hall. "Help me!" I froze. It was the same voice from the intercom. I struggled to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But curiosity outweighed my fear. Against my better judgment, I crept toward the sound. As I neared the end of the hallway, the whisper morphed into a distant sobbing. I peered into the shadows, searching for the source. The darkness swallowed everything, but I could almost make out a figure standing at the far end. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice shaky. The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by silence. My heart thumped in my ears. The figure turned slightly, and in that instant, I caught a glimpse of something pale. I gasped, a chilling realization washing over me. It looked like a nurse in an old-fashioned uniform, her face hidden in the shadows. "Please," came the voice again, almost a whisper but now clearer. "Help me!" Without thinking, I bolted down the corridor, my heart racing. There was no way I could stand still, I needed to escape this haunting moment. I reached the stairwell and took the steps 2 at a time. As I reached the bottom, the emergency lights flickered on. It cast a weak light that did little to soothe me. I glanced back toward the upper floor and felt a weight in my chest. I needed allies. Others had to believe me. When I reached the lobby, I ran into Tom, one of the night orderlies. "Did you hear that? The intercom? And the whispers?" I pleaded, my words tumbling out. Tom's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. The voice. It was strong this time. "It needs help. We need to do something." But before he could respond, the power flickered again. The lights went out, plunging us back into darkness. Panic surged through me as I reached for Tom's arm, desperate to find stability. Then we heard it, echoing through the silence, a distinct knocking coming from upstairs, rhythmic and insistent. It was followed by a familiar voice. "Help me!" I nodded to Tom, knowing we couldn't ignore this any longer. We had to find out what was happening, together. As we raced back up the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was drawn deeper into something I didn't understand. Every inch of the hospital felt alive, watching us, waiting for what we might uncover next. The air was heavy as Tom and I climbed the stairs, our footsteps echoing in the silence. I could barely hear my own heartbeat over the pounding echo of our urgency. The flickering emergency lights cast eerie shadows along the walls, making them seem like twisted figures lurking in the corners. When we reached the second-floor landing, the knocking stopped. A weight sat in the air, thick and uncomfortable. I exchanged a worried glance with Tom. "Where to now?" he whispered, half expecting an answer. "We should check that old nurse's station," I suggested, pointing down the dim hallway. That's where the voice seemed to come from. We moved carefully, each step filled with dread. As we approached the nurse's station, I felt a pull in my gut. Something wasn't right. The corridor was darker here, the faint emergency lights barely reaching us. It felt as if the shadows were closing in. "Wait," Tom cautioned, stopping suddenly. He looked up at the flickering light above us. "Something feels off." Before I could respond, I noticed a door at the end of the hall slowly creak open by itself. My breath caught in my throat. "Tom, did you see that?" But Tom was already walking toward it, drawn in by a morbid curiosity. I hesitated but followed. What else could we do? As we reached the doorway, the silhouette of a person appeared in the darkness within. I felt my skin crawl. It was another nurse, but this one was upright, her gaze fixated straight ahead, as if she were staring past us into some void. "Are you okay?" I called, trying to break the spell of silence. She didn't respond. Then, without warning, she spun around, the dim light reflecting off her pale face. In that moment, I realized her eyes were completely vacant, empty like the hallway around us. Panic surged back, memories of the ghostly nurse I saw earlier flashed through my mind. "Run!" I shouted to Tom, my voice laced with terror. We turned to flee, but the temperature dropped sharply, and the whisper echoed again, louder this time, surrounding us. "Help me, Tom," and I stumbled back toward the stairs, but as we ran, I heard faint footsteps behind us. They were slow and deliberate, gaining on us. I dared a glance back and saw the nurse following, her mouth moving silently, her expression twisted in despair. "Don't look!" Tom yelled, pulling me along faster. I could barely breathe, my chest tightening with every panicked step. We slammed through the stairwell door and descended, the light spilling down from above, leading us away from whatever horror lay behind. When we reached the emergency lobby again, the lights flickered back on, bathing everything in an artificial glow. I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. We couldn't let this go unanswered. We needed to find out what was happening. "We can't just leave it like this," I said, feeling desperate. "What if someone else gets trapped up there? We have to figure out who that was." Tom nodded, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. "Okay, but we need a plan. We can't just walk back up there unprepared." As we spoke, I felt a sharp pain at the back of my neck, the sensation like fingers brushing against my skin. I shivered and turned to look behind me, but no one was there. "Did you feel that?" I asked, my voice dropping. Tom nodded, eyes wide. "We're not alone." Just then, something caught my eye, a movement near the entrance. Someone stood hidden in the shadows, watching us. I froze, my heart racing again. "Who is there?" I shouted, but there was no response. And that's when I saw it, a scrap of paper fluttering to the floor, as if it had been deliberately dropped. Fear coursed through me as I crouched to pick it up. In shaky handwriting, it read, "They can't help you. Trust no one." The room felt colder, and I sensed a new fear creeping in, one I couldn't shake. We were digging deeper, and now, I had no idea who or what we could trust. I stood there, the scrap of paper trembling in my hand. The cryptic message burned in my mind. It felt like a warning, one that we obviously couldn't ignore. "What does it mean?" Tom whispered, as if afraid the shadows would answer him. "I don't know," I replied, glancing around. The lobby felt almost too quiet now, every creak echoing off the walls. I could sense Tom's unease growing as we both struggled with the reality of our situation. "Maybe we should just leave," he suggested, but I saw the determination in his eyes as he said it. He also wanted answers. "Not yet," I insisted, my voice firmer than I felt. "We need to find out what's going on." "We should ask someone," he suggested, but I had a bad feeling about that. Who could we even trust? Before I could voice my thoughts, the lights above us flickered again, casting an unsettling glow over the lobby. A chill ran down my spine as I noticed a figure standing in the far corner. My breath hitched when I recognized the white uniform, yet it was another nurse. She was staring straight at us, her expression blank and unyielding. "Do you see her?" Tom asked, his voice low. "Yes," I said, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, the nurse's mouth moved in a slow, exaggerated fashion. I couldn't hear words, but her lips formed a shape I recognized. "Help me." I felt the urge to run again, but I was rooted to the spot. Tom stepped forward, trying to approach her. "Hey, are you all right?" he called out. Seeing his sudden bravery made me both proud and terrified. The nurse tilted her head, and in that moment, something shifted in the atmosphere. It felt like the air had thickened. An unsettling sound echoed, a buzzing that seemed to rise from below us. "Tom, get back!" I yelled, feeling the urgency rise in me. As if sensing our fear, the nurse's gaze locked onto me. Her expression twisted ever so slightly, a hint of accusation there. I felt guilty, as if she was blaming me for something I didn't even understand. Just then, the main doors of the lobby rattled violently. Tom recoiled and dashed back to my side. "What was that?" he gasped. My pulse raced. "I don't know, but we need to check. We can't ignore it." Against my better judgment, I moved towards the noise. I had to know if something was trying to get in, or worse, if it was something that was already inside. With every step, the air felt heavier, almost suffocating. As I drew closer to the doors, I caught glimpses of shadows moving outside, fluid in their motion but somehow unnatural. And then I spotted it, a figure standing outside, illuminated sporadically by the flickering hallway lights. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. The shadows paused, and for a brief moment, everything went silent. Then, slowly, the figure stepped into the light. It was another nurse, but this one looked worn, her uniform torn and stained. Her hair hung in strings around her face. The moment she locked eyes with me, I felt a wave of terror wash over me. "Get out!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "They're coming for you." Before I could react, she turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving me with more questions than answers and a desperation to understand this nightmare we had stumbled into. I exchanged a glance with Tom, who looked just as bewildered. "What do we do now?" And before I could answer, the lights above us went out completely. We were plunged into darkness, the low hum of electricity gone, and suddenly it felt like we were not just in a hospital, but trapped in a nightmare we couldn't escape. I stood frozen in the dark, my heart racing. The silence felt thick, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. "Tom," I whispered, hoping he was still beside me. "I'm here," he replied, just a breath away. His voice sounded shaky. "What do we do?" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling a pit open in my stomach. "But we can't just stand here." I took a tentative step forward, my hands outstretched to feel whatever lay ahead. It was like walking into an abyss. Memories of the nurse flashed in my mind, the desperation in her eyes, her warning echoing through my thoughts. Suddenly, a low sound broke the quiet, a series of distant footsteps. I froze, my breath hitching. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, glancing towards Tom. "Yes. It's coming from that way," he whispered back, pointing toward the hall leading deeper into the hospital. "Should we check it out?" I asked, though I was already pretty sure I knew what my answer would be. Yeah, let us go, he said, his voice brimming with an unconvincing confidence. Together, we crept down the hallway, staying close to the wall. It felt like we were intruders in a ghostly realm. Shadows danced in what little light there was, but they weren't right, too fluid, too quick. As we reached the bend in the corridor, an eerie glow appeared ahead. I squinted to see what it was. It looked like the flicker of candles against the wall. Maybe someone else is here, Tom suggested, his voice almost hopeful. Or maybe they're just pretending, I countered, trying to temper his optimism. I couldn't shake the sensation that whatever we were about to find might not be friendly. We rounded the corner cautiously. The glow intensified, revealing a small gathering figures draped in white, standing around a table. My heart sank. It looked like an offering, a collection of strange objects, each one more unsettling than the last, a bloody bandage, a broken watch, and an empty pill bottle. What is this? Tom whispered, stepping slightly closer despite my instincts urging him to stay back. Before I could respond, one of the figures turned. My breath caught again. It was wearing a mask, a smooth porcelain face with a crooked grin painted on it. It stared straight at us, its eyes dark and hollow. Help us, it said, its voice eerily melodic, yet hollow. We need your assistance. Get away. I shouted, grabbing Tom's arm and pulling him back. This was not how I imagined the night would unfold. But just as we turned to flee, the passageway behind us darkened further. Panic surged through me when I realized the flickering light was now gone. What do we do? Tom's voice trembled, and I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. Then everything changed again. A loud crash came from the direction we had just fled. I hesitated, torn between the instinct to run and the gut feeling that staying put was a mistake. Maybe we should go back, I suggested, but my voice faltered. What awaited us there? Another figure? Something worse? Before I could decide, the figure in the mask began to step toward us, its movements smooth yet unsettling. You must stay. Seconds felt like hours, and then in a brief moment everything went dark once more. I couldn't see anything. My hands shot out to feel for Tom, but all I grasped was emptiness. And then I heard a raspy whisper, just behind me. Join us. I froze, terror gripping me. In that moment, I understood we were not alone, and whatever was lurking in the shadows was waiting for us to make our next move. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't find my voice. The whisper hung in the air, a sinister invitation that turned my blood to ice. I reached blindly for Tom, panic twisting my insides. Tom! I managed to croak out. I'm here. His voice was shaky and barely above a whisper. I felt his shoulder brush against mine, and I clung to it like a lifeline. What is happening? I don't know. We need to get out of here. My heart raced as I scanned the darkness, desperate for any semblance of light. But then, a stinging realization hit me: the figures were still there. They hadn't retreated. Help us! The voice came again, this time from multiple directions, a haunting echo that would not let go. Join us! Suddenly, the air around me shifted. A cold breeze whipped through the corridor, wrapping around me like a serpent. I could feel something brushing past my arm, something more than just wind. I pressed myself against the wall, hoping it would swallow me whole. What do we do? Tom asked, his voice barely a whisper now. I think we should keep moving, I said, forcing my feet to take a step forward, then another, urging Tom to do the same. Each movement felt heavy, as if I was wading through water. The shadows seemed to pulse around us. With every step, I half expected something to reach out and grab me, to yank me back into the dark. I sensed eyes on us, watching, waiting. We need to find a way out, I murmured, almost to myself. There has to be an exit somewhere. We stumbled forward, back the way we had come, but the shapes in white were still there, seemingly blocking our path. Desperation clawed at my throat. Just then, a figure stepped closer, its porcelain mask glinting in the faintest bit of light. "Stay with us," it pleaded, and my resolve crumbled. I turned and yanked Tom with me, running now, our footsteps echoing loud against the desolation. We dashed toward a door at the end of the corridor, hoping it led to freedom. The figures were behind us, and now I could hear their footsteps impossibly quick, gaining on us. With a burst of adrenaline, I shoved the heavy door open. It creaked loudly, revealing a dimly lit room filled with old medical equipment. I hesitated, glancing back to see the figures halting just outside the doorframe, their expressions unreadable behind the masks. "Why are they just standing there?" Tom gasped, panting. "I don't know, but we can't waste this chance." I bolted into the room, pulling Tom in after me. I shut the door with a forceful slam, pressing my back against it to catch my breath. The wooden surface felt solid, a thin barrier between us and whatever lay outside. But the quiet didn't last long. The faint scratching began fingernails against the wood. "Let us in," they whispered in unison, their voices dripping with a yearning that made my skin crawl. "That's not normal," Tom said, his face pale. I didn't need to look at him to sense the dread twisting his features. "Maybe they can't come in here," I said, trying to convince myself. But a glance toward the door made my stomach drop. The shadows were gathering, pooling under the crack at the bottom. Then something hit the door, hard. It rattled on its hinges. My eyes widened. We should find a way out of here, now. I spun around, frantic, and that's when I saw it, a small window high up on the wall. But getting to it wouldn't be easy. It felt like time stood still as the door buckled again beneath their strength. "Tom, boost me!" I shouted, my voice barely piercing through the mounting panic. "Are you crazy?" he said, eyes wide. "Do it. We have to get out." I insisted, my heart racing even faster than before. The door cracked again, and this time, I felt a chill crawl over my skin. Desperation propelled us forward. I felt the urgency rising in my throat, pushing me to act. The moment Tom crouched down, I placed my foot on his back and climbed up, the splintering wood of the door framing groaning under the mounting pressure. "Hurry!" I hissed, my voice a frayed thread. I stretched my arms toward the window, my fingertips brushing the cool glass. It was just out of reach, but I gritted my teeth, straining against the muscles in my legs. I could feel Tom shaking beneath me, his breath quickening, as the pounding on the door intensified. "Got it." My hand finally grasped the windowsill, and I pulled myself up with a grunt. My heart pounded as I quickly looked out into the night. The moon hung heavy in the sky, illuminating the sprawling parking lot below. Hope surged through me. "Can you make it?" Tom called, breathless. I turned to see him scrambling to climb up next to me, fear etched all over his face. "I think so. Just lift me." I was almost there. If I could just swing my leg over. But with a thunderous crash, the door gave way. It splintered as the figures surged into the room in a cloud of shadow and desperation, their masked faces twisted in silent screams. Tom's eyes went wide, and he recoiled, scrambling back as I slipped through the window. I felt the cold air hit my skin as I half fell onto the ledge. I barely caught myself, the sharp pain of landing sent a jolt through me. "Jump!" I shouted, panic lacing my voice. I twisted back toward the window just in time to see Tom's face contorting in horror. "Climb out. Now!" He took a deep breath and dove through the window, landing beside me on the ledge. We were both shaking as we caught our breath, the night air fierce against our skin. But just as we would have started to crawl down, a piercing scream shattered the stillness. The figures had reached the window, climbing over each other to get to us. The sound crawled under my skin like 1,000 icy fingers. "Go!" I urged, pushing Tom ahead. We scrambled down, our feet slipping on the cold metal. Finally, we dropped to the ground, the asphalt hard beneath us. Run! I yelled, feeling the stress and urgency press against my chest. And run we did, racing toward the nearest car, our hearts pounding like drums in our ears. As we emerged into the parking lot, I stole a glance behind. The figures had paused, forming a ring around the open window, their heads tilting eerily to one side as they watched us with hungry eyes. Did they see us? Tom asked, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know, I said, my breath coming in quick bursts. My eyes were scanning frantically for an escape route, looking for a glimmer of safety among the shadows. My stomach churned with dread as a horrible thought crept into my mind. We can't stay here. But before I could think of where to go next, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A set of keys dangling from the ignition of an old sedan parked just a few feet away. Tom, over here. I pulled him toward the car, my heart leaping with a glimmer of hope. If I could get inside, we might have a chance. But as I reached for the handle, the air shifted again. I could feel a presence behind me. I didn't need to look to know the figures were moving. The sound of their whispering grew closer, filling my ears, urging me to turn around. Join us, and then, just like that, the headlights of the car flickered and died. Everything went dark. The darkness swallowed us whole. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes, but that only made the shadows feel thicker. I held my breath, listening. The whispering of the figures had grown louder, swirling around us like a thick fog, a low, chilling melody that unnerved me to my core. Tom. My voice came out hoarse, barely audible. I reached for him in the black void, instinctively searching for his familiar warm presence. Are you okay? I'm here. His voice trembled. The fear was palpable, pressing down on us like the weight of a million invisible hands. What is happening? I don't know. We have to find the keys. I forced my mind to focus. I couldn't let panic take over. The car door's handle should still be within reach, but where was the window? I raised my hand just in time to catch the edge of the vehicle, fingers grazing the cold metal as I made my way back toward it. Suddenly, a sharp crack pierced the silence, like a branch snapping underfoot. It sent shivers racing up my spine. I froze, my heart thundered in my ears. Something was out there, beyond the darkness. Did you hear that? I whispered. Yes, Tom said, his breath coming quick. We need to get out of here. Determined, I focused on finding the door handle. My fingers finally closed around it, and I pulled. The door creaked in protest, but I forced it open, the sound echoing through the night like a gunshot. I hesitated, peering into the pitch-black interior of the sedan. I couldn't see if there were any objects inside, or worse, what might be lurking within. Get in. I urged Tom, shoving him forward. He hesitated, one last glance cast over his shoulder before he scrambled into the passenger seat. I followed, slamming the door shut behind us. As I fumbled for the ignition, a shuffling noise made the hair on my neck stand up. I spun around, expecting to see a figure at the window, but nothing was there, only the profound silence that felt like a predator stalking us. Any luck? Tom asked, glancing nervously toward the darkness outside. Not yet. My hands felt shaky as I searched the space under the seat for the keys, my fingers brushing against something cold and metallic. I pulled my hand back as though I'd been burned, recognizing an old flashlight instead. Here. I clicked it on, beams of light slicing through the gloom. But what I saw made my blood run cold. Instead of the open parking lot, the light revealed a twisted landscape of hulking shadows, standing far too still, their eyes howling with hunger. They hadn't just moved closer, they had surrounded the car. Drive! I yelled, adrenaline kicking in. But my voice quivered with a desperate edge. I had no keys. We're trapped. Tom shrieked, his eyes wide with terror. It was true, there was nowhere to go. That's when I saw it. A figure, cloaked in darkness, stepped from behind the car. Unlike the others, this one had no mask. Just a face, pale and gaunt, lips curled into a twisted grin. It took a step forward, reaching for the door. "Join us," it rasped, its voice like a knife, cutting through the darkness. I looked to Tom, panic engulfing my senses. I didn't have a plan. All I knew was that we had to act before it was too late. "Start kicking," I shouted as the figure lunged at the window. "Now." And in that instant, as our feet connected with the glass, I realized we were only beginning to understand the horror around us. As the impact of our feet hit the window, a crack splintered across the glass. The figure paused, momentarily taken aback by our unexpected resistance. I could feel the weight upon us shifting, a suspenseful silence hanging like a noose, and my heart raced, a wild animal seeking escape. "Keep going," I urged, adrenaline thrumming through my veins. Tom and I kicked harder, the sound of glass shattering echoing into the night. With one last powerful thrust, the window shattered completely, sending shards cascading into the dark void beyond. The figure screeched, the desperate sound pierced through my fear. "Please, help me," it cried, but I sensed a malicious intent woven within its words. That pleading tone felt like a trap, baiting us into surrender. "No," I gasped, tearing my gaze away. "We can't let it trick us." I took a deep breath and nodded toward the shattered window. "We have to climb out." Tom's eyes darted between me and the chaos outside. "What if they grab us? What choice do we have?" I replied, my voice cracking, but I felt an urgency to act. "We must try." With determination, I wiggled out of my seat and clambered through the jagged opening. My skin brushed against the broken edges, leaving a searing sting that barely registered in the face of impending danger. I hit the ground just as Tom followed, his long frame tumbling through the window but managing to land on his feet. We scanned the parking lot, our breaths mingling with the chilly air. The figures were pacing now like restless shadows, they circled the car with dark hunger in their eyes. There was an unsettling rhythm to their movements, a ritualistic dance that was both terrifying and captivating. "Which way?" Tom whispered urgently, desperation creeping into his voice as he gripped my shoulder. I had no clear answer, but the parking lot was our only chance. "That way," I shouted, pointing toward a flickering light near the far end of the lot. It was faint, but it beckoned with the promise of safety. Without pausing to think, we sprinted towards it, our feet pounding against the asphalt. As we ran, whispers filled the air, a chilling chorus urging us to stop, to turn back. "Join us," they wailed, a haunting cacophony echoing through the night that made my skin crawl. The sound chased us, danced close behind like a persistent predator. We reached the edge of the light, breathing heavily, scanning for any doors or windows that could lead us to safety. But the anxiety blanketed each thought with doubt. What if there was no escape? What if this was it? "Over here!" Tom shouted, his voice brimming with sudden excitement. He pointed at a door half obscured by shadows, its shape barely recognizable. We reached the door as the wave of figures closed in behind us, their whispers transforming into a howling wind that rattled the air. My hand trembled as I fumbled for the handle. It wouldn't budge. "Try again," Tom urged, glancing back at the advancing darkness that looked hungry for our fears. With a surge of adrenaline, I pulled harder, and this time the door creaked open, revealing a dim corridor. I stepped inside, Tom right behind me, and we slammed the door shut just as the sound of shattering glass erupted outside. Breathless in the stillness of the hallway, time felt suspended. Shadows flickered at the edges, darting back and forth like breathing entities. "Are we safe?" Tom gasped, resting against the door, as it shuddered from the force of what pursued us outside. "I don't know," I managed, my voice trembling. We couldn't afford to let our guard down, but a flicker of determination ignited within me. "But we can't stop now. We need to figure out how to escape this place for good." As I gathered my bearings, something caught my eye at the end of the corridor, a small window high above, just like in the car. I squinted, leaning closer. "Do you see that?" I motioned to Tom. He joined me, and relief washed over his face. "If we can reach that, we might find our way to the roof or what?" His voice was edged with anxiety. "What if it leads back to them?" I hesitated, but I pressed on. "We're out of options. It could be the only way to break free." He nodded, albeit reluctantly. As we moved further down the corridor, the sensations felt thick around us. The whispers gradually morphed into a unified chant of voices soaked in desperation and rage. "Join us," they echoed, a murmur that threatened to fill my mind. At the window, I found a wooden crate stacked against the wall, a forgotten remnant of a different time. "Help me with this," I urged Tom. We shifted it beneath the window, leaning it against the wall for support. "I think I can climb it," I said, feeling my heartbeat drum in anticipation. With every fiber of existence telling me to hurry, I scrambled up, feeling Tom's hand steady me at the back. "Just keep watch," I called down, hoping to find resilience despite the encroaching whispers that slithered around us. I reached for the window, grasping the ledge, but something clawed at me beneath every heartbeat, forcing me to glance back. The corridor shimmered with flickers of darkness. They were closer, stretching their forms toward us, a tide of shadows mounting, eager to pull us back. "Claire!" Tom shouted, breaking my trance. I heaved myself up, desperately staring at the abyss beyond. "Just climb." And as I swung my leg over that sill, a scream erupted around me, a cacophony of desperation that clawed at the edge of reality. I dropped to the other side, landing in a low crawl space, my body instinctively seeking an out of this chaos. "Tom!" I yelled, panic clawing up my throat again. But as he climbed through after me, the sound fell silent. I watched with horror as he hesitated at the window while shadows closed in on his frame. "Get in here!" I screamed, reaching out. With one last leap, he finally cleared the window, tumbling down beside me. The door behind rattled fiercely, a crescendo of rage building outside. "Let us go!" I gasped, rushing forward despite the fear tightening around us. Without thinking, I stumbled ahead, my gut twisting, still unsure whether escape lay ahead or deeper shadows lurked. But that fear only fueled my feet. We crawled low through a small tunnel, the walls closing in, but we pressed forward, not knowing what awaited us. Somewhere deep inside, an echo remained. A whisper I could not shake. Join us. Was it just the fatigue playing tricks? Or a buried truth chasing us down? As we crawled through that tunnel, the lingering questions clung to the air. What hunted us? What truths lay buried beneath the hospital's surface, waiting to resurface at the most inopportune moment? Emerging from the tunnel into an uncertain light, I took a singular resolve: perhaps some questions would never be answered.